The night was calm, and the road stretched like a ribbon toward the unknown. 4 friends, Ethan, Mira, Jason, and Olivia, were driving through the United States on their way to New York after a week-long vacation in Kentucky. Their GPS suddenly glitched, rerouting them through a narrow mountain path they had never seen. The landscape felt wrong. Trees twisted in strange directions, and the sky seemed too dark. Eventually, they reached a silent town called Blackridge Hollow. No people, no sound, no movement. Small American flags hung on rusted poles like they had not touched wind for decades. The air smelled of metal and dust. Even the gas station lights flickered weakly, barely alive. With no fuel left and no open building except an abandoned motel, they checked in. The room smelled damp. Old newspapers scattered across the floor. They sat on the beds, laughing nervously until the streetlights outside buzzed on. Ethan glanced toward the wall and froze. His shadow moved before he did, stretching longer, bending upward like it was alive. Olivia gasped, whispering that it must be their exhausted imagination, but Mira screamed as her shadow dripped a thick black tear down the wallpaper. Morning came colder than the night. The friends walked toward a broken sheriff's office hoping to find someone, anyone, alive. Inside, papers lay rotting, chairs overturned, and dust filled the air like fog. On the desk rested a single handwritten note that chilled Olivia's bones. Do not trust your shadow after sunset. As they read the message, Mira noticed her shadow was darker than before, less connected to her movements. Jason stepped outside and pointed to the windows, where their reflections looked normal, but the shadows beneath their feet twitched like insects. The group decided to explore the town. They found empty houses with all belongings intact, children's toys untouched, TV dinners still on tables, calendars frozen at 1977. As they turned a corner, they spotted an old woman sitting on a rocking chair, quietly humming. Her eyes were hollow, voice trembling as she said, "Your shadows already know you. Once night comes, they will rise higher than you can stand." She refused to speak more, only whispering that no one ever leaves. Back at the motel, Olivia noticed their shadows were slightly behind, delaying every movement by half a second, as if waiting to break free. The sun dropped behind the woods early, almost unnaturally fast, as if night was eager to start. Ethan locked the motel doors, and they gathered in one room, piling lamps and flashlights around themselves. When darkness took the street, their shadows stretched across the walls, alive in silent motion. Jason sat on the edge of the bed, trying to calm his breathing, but suddenly his shadow's hand wrapped around his throat. He fell backward, choking, legs kicking wildly. Ethan grabbed a lamp and shoved the light toward Jason's body. The shadow recoiled like smoke, melting down the wall. Jason gasped for air, shaking violently, but when he stood up, his shadow no longer stayed flat. It had glowing white eyes and a sinister grin. Olivia broke down crying, saying they had to leave the town immediately. Mira tried calling 911, but every call looped back into static voices, whispering their names. Jason's shadow crawled across the carpet at night, circling them like a predator. Ethan wrote in his notebook, they must survive until sunrise. No one slept. They sat trembling, watching Jason's shadow move independently, its jagged fingers scratching words into the wall one by one. Morning light didn't bring peace. Mira discovered a town library buried beneath dust, its windows shattered. Hoping to understand what was happening, they stepped inside. Old newspapers lay stacked and yellowed, as though untouched for decades. Headlines read, "Military Project Shadowfold begins," "Cold War experiment tested in Blackridge Hollow," and finally, "Town evacuated after catastrophic incident." Reading further, Ethan found details describing a U.S. military program meant to weaponize shadows using portal energy beneath the church. Test subjects lost control of their own reflections, eventually breaking apart from their bodies. The military sealed the town and erased it from all maps. Jason's breathing worsened, his body growing colder, his eyes unfocused. He mumbled that his shadow spoke to him all night, promising freedom if he surrendered. In the church basement, they saw walls carved with claw marks and blood frozen like dark paint. Olivia whispered that the ground felt alive, pulsing faintly. As they stepped outside, Jason said he could hear his shadow calling from underground. The group argued whether to run or stay. Thunder rolled across the sky, though no clouds were visible. It was clear they were trapped inside a forgotten American nightmare designed by human hands. At dawn, Ethan discovered Jason missing from his bed. Panic exploded through the motel room. Drag marks stained the hallway carpet, leading toward an abandoned government bunker at the edge of town. Following the trail, they heard Jason screaming underground. Olivia cried his name, echoing through silence. Inside the bunker, floors rattled beneath their feet, electricity humming faintly through rusted wires. A single lamp flickered at the end of the hall, revealing Jason suspended in air, strangled by his own shadow. The creature hissed when the group approached, sinking Jason into darkness. Olivia swung a broken pipe, smashing the lamp. The shadow slithered back, and Jason fell limp to the ground. But when they rolled him over, his body vanished like smoke, leaving nothing but clothing. His shadow, however, crawled up the wall behind them and vanished into deeper tunnels. Mira shouted they must leave the bunker, but the exit door slammed shut, trapping them in pure darkness. Whispering voices filled the room, saying Ethan's name again and again. When the door finally opened by itself, only Jason's empty shadow followed them back to the surface, dragging itself across the pavement, smiling without a face. The next day, sunlight felt weaker, barely warming their skin. Ethan noticed his shadow twitching away from his feet. It stretched long, curling upward and forming a second outline, almost identical to his body. Olivia screamed when her shadow spoke softly. Soon, panic spread quickly. Mira suggested leaving town at once. They packed their bags and drove toward the highway, but every road curved back to the same intersection near the motel. Their car engine died. The shadows continued stretching, becoming thicker, almost three-dimensional. Ethan stood horrified as his shadow reached out and touched his arm, leaving black prints that burned like frost. Olivia saw children's shadows playing in the streets, though no children existed there. They heard footsteps behind them constantly, yet no one appeared. Mira wrote messages to herself on her arms, saying, "I am still real." But the ink began fading instantly, as if the shadow beneath her skin erased it. That night, their shadows stood separate while they tried to sleep. Mira awoke to her shadow staring into her eyes from the ceiling. She whispered she felt herself slipping away, her soul stretching towards darkness. Night fell like a heavy curtain. The wind finally blew for the first time since their arrival, carrying distant whispers. Ethan saw shadows gathered outside the motel, dozens of them, forming a silent crowd. Olivia begged Mira to run, but the old woman appeared again, limping through the hallway with terrified eyes. She whispered, "One must burn." They didn't understand until she placed a small rusted lighter in Mira's hands and told them the shadows fed of identity. The old woman confessed she had once been part of a family, her husband and daughter lost to their shadows decades ago. She stayed alive only by burning her own shadow each sunrise. Ethan refused to sacrifice anyone, but Olivia stepped forward, shaking. She said if someone didn't sever their shadow, the others would die. Olivia held the flame beneath her shadow. The burning smell filled the room, and her shadow shrieked with her own voice. Ethan screamed for her to stop, but she collapsed lifeless, smiling faintly as her shadow dissolved into ash. Outside, the shadow crowd roared silently, furious. Now there were only Ethan and Mira left, trembling behind a locked motel door, knowing the final night awaited them. Before dawn, Ethan and Mira ran through the forest, guided by fading moonlight. They reached a highway and collapsed, sobbing in relief as a sheriff's patrol car approached. The officer asked if they were lost, offering to drive them to safety. Exhausted and traumatized, they entered the vehicle, leaning back and watching the sun rise. Mira looked down, confused. There were no shadows beneath their feet, not even under the car seats.
Ethan felt an eerie chill and checked the window reflection. He wasn't breathing fog like a living person. His reflection stood still. The sheriff stared at them in the rear. "You, Mira," and whispered, "Welcome back to Blackridge Hollow." The surrounding road transformed instantly, trees twisting into familiar shapes. They were no longer on a highway.